calendar for the 2016 school year. We're having the work session tonight. It will be new business on November 16, which is a Monday meeting, action on the Thursday, December 3 meeting. And we're going to recommend that amendments get turned in by Monday, November 23, so that the community has time to provide feedback to the board about the amendments. So that gives them some time. So this is our chance tonight to understand staff's recommendation. We have some other information there. I would request that we not. I'm going to recommend that we not debate pros and cons about what we want, because we'll have the meetings to do that. This is the time to get information and understand, seek clarification, so that if you make an amendment, you're able to do that. So, look at all those helpful hands. That's just so good. Okay. So, Dr. Garza, do you want to kick this off?
Yes, I would.
Okay.
Actually, that's what happened. I was reaching for the microphone. Apologies. Okay. Of course, Marty will talk about the details related to the recommended calendar for your consideration for our next school year 16-17. There are a couple of things. First of all, right now, the board only has the authority to adopt a school calendar that starts after Labor Day. We do not have an approved waiver from the state. So, number one, you all need to consider, the recommended calendar and any adjustments you want to make on on a calendar that would start after Labor Day. So that's one piece. Secondly, should you wish to do so, we could post for the public's information what a pre-Labor Day calendar would look like, assuming at some point during the school year, if we experience 5 inclement weather days, the board automatically has the ability to get an approval to start before Labor Day, should you wish to do so. So that's up to you, should you wish to do that. If you don't want to consider that at this point, you certainly don't have to do that either. It's just an option should you wish to do that. So that down the road, if there are 5 inclement weather days, it's difficult, I think, for parents to make a change if it's sometime like maybe in February, potentially. So that's certainly something for your consideration. But in terms of formal action, it could only be a calendar after Labor Day. So thank you, Ms. Smith. I'll let Mr. Smith walk through kind of the details associated with the calendar that's recommended tonight that's received. We've had a lot of input into,
So thank you, Dr. Garza. And I have with me tonight Sherry Burris. She is a human resource technician in the Office of Equity and Employee Relations. In the past, we've had Cindy Trink at the table, who's been responsible for the calendar, and this responsibility now falls on Sherry's shoulders. And she's done a wonderful job coming into the calendar very new this year and providing the framework for us that we use as we go out and work with our stakeholder groups. So as Dr. Garza said, we're bringing one calendar for your consideration, and we have some variations. We have a pre-Labor Day start. We also have the 2 calendars that show what the addition of a veterans holiday would look like for the calendar. So we've also brought those just to show you what that would look like. We've received input from all of our employee associations regarding this calendar, and based on that input, we made the best decisions possible and based on their collective input. As we go out and speak with individual associations, everyone has a bit of a different spin on the calendar and with different requirements, and so we listen, we take all of that, and we try to bring the best calendar for you, and there it is behind us.
Marty, I didn't say, because I think I do every year as we start this process, there is no perfect calendar.
There is no perfect calendar.
There's no perfect calendar, so I just want the record to reflect.
And just for a bit of a refresher about the calendar, we go through this just once a year, so we want to bring you up to speed. We're required to publish a 180-day calendar with a 990-hour requirement for students. So in the event of inclement weather, if we're not able to meet that 180-day requirement, we then revert to the 990-day, I'm sorry, I always say that, the 990-hour requirement. It's also important to note that as we develop this calendar, we have to ensure that we have the 180 days during the regular school year and 90 days for each semester. So all of those yellow days that you see up there are the 180 days for students. And I just want to break down what else you're seeing on the calendar. You'll note that there are 14 pink days. Those are non-student days. We call those teacher work days. We have 24 blue days on the calendar, which are holidays. 10 of those holidays are required during the school year for our 12-month employees. And we have 4 green days on the calendar, which are our new teacher orientation days. And before we get started, I want to draw your attention to June. If we could scroll down just a little bit on the calendar, maybe if we could make it a bit, you just scroll down. I want to show you June 23rd. So this is a very important date because it's the last day of school for our students. And as we developed the calendar, June 23rd fell perfectly on a Friday. So any additions or any changes that we want to make to those yellow days on the calendar, which are our student days, it would essentially move that date into the next week. And so we've been very thoughtful about that as we've developed this calendar, noting that any changes that we make to the calendar moves that June 23rd date into the next week for 1 day for students to come back the following week, and we know how difficult that can be for families. So with that, we're going to jump into the calendar and start with August. We'll scroll back up. One major change with this August calendar, you'll note that the first day for teachers is August 26th. That's a departure from previous years, and we've brought this date onto the calendar because it's tied to that June 23rd date. In our previous calendar, we had, at the end of June, 3 staff days at the end of the year, and with feedback from our teachers and principal groups, they didn't feel that those 3 days at the end of the year would be good for our teachers after a very long school year. Focusing on planning for the following year, in many of our schools, some of those teachers aren't even going to be in that same school for the next school year, so it wouldn't be good for planning. So we opted to move this day to the beginning of the year. Our principals and teachers feel that that's a good option for planning at the beginning of the year. We must also note that we have some teachers, though, who feel that this does end their school year or end their summer a bit prematurely. So it's important to note that that was feedback from our teacher groups. And then moving to the week of the 29th, which goes into September, you'll note that we have 4 teacher work days and a staff development day. Now, in years past, the school board has designated one of those days within that week as an alternate work location day for teachers. Feedback that we've received from principals and teachers is that they would really like that time, to be in their classrooms working rather than working from an alternate location. So we've been able to talk with all 3 of our principal associations, and they are now going to guarantee that teachers during those that first week of school will have at least 2 equivalent days of time to actually put their classrooms together and prepare their classrooms. We spoke with the
Self-directed time.
Yes,
Yeah,
self-directed time. That's all self-directed time. We've spoken with the presidents of the associations. They pushed it out to all of their principals, and in record time, we got feedback within 2 days stating that, yes, overwhelmingly, they would allow that for teachers. So for us then, with principals allowing that, we would make the recommendation that the alternate work location day that's designated by the school board would be November 8th, which is Election Day. And we'll get into that as we move down the calendar. As you get into October, you'll note that we have adjacent to our Columbus Day holiday, we have a school planning day, which we've had on the calendar for the past 2 years. Moving into November, one thing to note is that Election Day falls a week later than it normally does. Election Day, constitutionally, it is the first Tuesday after the first Monday in November. Of course, you all know that well. And so because of that, it's allowed us to add a bit of time to the first quarter, but it does push our normal day that we would have for elections into that second week, which is why we're recommending, thinking that we're going to have record voter turnouts in the 17 election, or in the 16 election, that this day be designated as an alternate work day for our teachers. Then, of course, we have our Thanksgiving holiday there at the end of the month. Moving into December, as we've done last year and for this school year, we are providing our teachers with a 2-week winter break. It's been a very popular break. The feedback overwhelmingly from all of our employee groups was they like this 2-week winter break. We see students shaking their heads as well about the 2-week winter break. And it's popular because it provides 3 full weekends for our families and staff for that winter break. Now, moving into January, you'll see that it's interesting to provide that 2-week break. We have to provide another day because we need to provide our 12-month employees with their holiday for New Year's Day. Some other changes in January, you'll note that we have our Martin Luther King Jr. birthday holiday, as well as the 20th, which is our inauguration holiday. Inauguration Day in the Washington metropolitan area is a federal holiday, so we must recognize that. If we move into February, it's pretty straightforward with the end of the quarter on the 3rd, adjacent to a teacher workday and President's Day. In March, you'll see that we have a staff development day toward the end of the month. We normally have that staff development day in January, but because we already had 3 days out in January, and noting that we had no days off in March, we wanted to provide a bit of respite for teachers and parents and students during the month of March. It's a staff development day, which is a central development day, and it falls well after the writing exams, the SOL writing exams. Moving to April, we have spring break. Now, you'll note that there's a change. For the past 2 years, we've been able to provide a teacher workday for the Monday following spring break. We weren't able to provide that in this particular calendar because we have to adhere to 90 days in the first semester and 90 days in the second semester. Also noting that if we do anything different with those yellow days, it then moves the 23rd into the next week. So we've been trying to work this calendar many different ways, and with a lot of input from our associations, realized that if we did provide that day, it would, again, move that end of the year until the next week. May is very straightforward, and June we've already spoken about, noting that we have a school planning day and a teacher work day at the end of the year. And then moving all the way over to the far right here, we have our quarter breakdowns. The duration of the first quarter is 42 days, second quarter being 48 days, third quarter being 51 days, and the fourth quarter 39. We have gotten some feedback from our high schools where they're a bit concerned about having that shortened quarter for the last quarter. And the third quarter, though, would provide some support for teachers as they're helping students prepare for the SOLs. So that is the post-Labor Day calendar. Before we move into the next calendar, are there any questions about the post-Labor Day calendar? Because we have many different attachments, and so I want you to be able to track along with me.
Can you just talk a little bit about why Inauguration Day is a holiday?
Inauguration Day is a federal holiday within the DC metropolitan area, and so we align ourselves with that federal holiday.
So we have that, but not Veterans Day.
Do we have to have that as a holiday? Inauguration Day.
We can certainly check on that. We'll take that as a note.
We have typically, if I could just add something, we have typically provided that as a holiday when it has happened previously.
Megan, then Sandy.
So, since it's only a student holiday, Inauguration Day, not for our employees, so.
No, it's an employee holiday.
So, then why is it saying student holiday?
No, there's an.
I know, it's blue. Blue means student holiday.
Does it say student holiday there? Oh, we can fix that. Student and staff holiday.
It needs to be student staff holiday.
Yes,
Yeah, blue is just for kids,
good
right?
catch, thank you.
No,
The-
blue is,
Blue is everyone, pink is just for kids. And blue is not for everyone within the winter break. We have 10 holidays where everyone has those holidays off during the school year.
Where it gets difficult, I think where it gets difficult is depending upon your contract length, it's not, all the blue are not holidays for all employees. And so that makes it difficult, but I get your point, Ms. McLaughlin. It says student holiday at the under H, so we need to be a little bit more
That's
clear.
where that's where I was drawing the confusion. Okay. So I guess my concern when we look at this holiday is, I mean, we look at this version of the calendar, and I did get an email from a family in my district that we usually at the end of the semester, second quarter, semester break, there's usually been like a 2-day break for the students where they end up having, because I used to go on ski trips with my kids before they started playing high school basketball.
So when we had a work day in January at the end of the semester,
So what I'm noticing is that we end the quarter on February 3rd, right? And you have a teacher workday on the 6th. And then we have the president's holiday. But in listening to our families, it would seem to me having inauguration day is far less of a priority than the families who in Fairfax County, quite honestly, have gotten used to a 4-day weekend. They take their kids skiing while it's the end of the second quarter. So
what we did this past year and what we did last year is that we created teacher workdays with 2-hour early release at the end of the quarter and teacher workday adjacent to the end of the quarter, which would allow parents the opportunity to leave early if they needed to and add an additional day to that weekend.
So you're saying that Friday the 3rd is going to be an early release day?
Friday the 3rd is an early release day. All of the end of quarters, anything with a QE or a 2E or LE, those are all early release days in the calendar. 2-hour early releases.
Well, I'm looking at this and thinking about the priorities and where we're putting our holidays and not. And I know you'll get to that next, but I will just say that I've lived in the Washington area now for over 25 years, and I know Inauguration Day comes every 4, but I would have absolutely flunked the test if somebody said, is this a federally recognized holiday? I mean, I'm pretty sure my husband goes to work in his private industry business, and the whole controversy about we follow federal holidays, just not Veterans Day, but we do
Okay,
on Inauguration Day.
I'm going to keep us moving. I have Sandy Il-Young-Janey.
So Marty, I didn't understand this issue of the third and fourth quarter. If the semesters have to be even, I'm not understanding why the third and fourth quarter can't be more even if it's a semester by semester.
Because it depends on where you can place the end of the quarter based on the breaks that are within that particular quarter. So it doesn't work out perfectly because you may have a holiday, you may have a teacher workday on that 90th day or for the 45th day for the quarter. So they don't work out perfectly, but we at least try to make sure that it works out to where you have 90 days. Additionally, we've always tried to have the end of the first quarter align with that election day, with election day.
So for an example, in April, to move that, to balance those quarters a little bit more,
Yes.
we would have to move the end of the quarter up right after spring break. And so if kids have makeup work or any kind of test at the end of the quarter, it's just right up next to spring break. It's just sometimes the way these dates fall and the calendar falls. Do you see what I'm saying?
I do.
You'd have to move that one up to shorten it to make
So you'd have to move it, if you moved it up a week, right? I mean, if you,
Right after spring break.
so you're saying that you wouldn't want to do that because it's too close to spring break? Okay. All right. January 2nd as a holiday. I'm looking at a very long winter break now, and I understand that we're told. It surprised me when I first heard this about how many people really like that full 2 weeks at winter break. But I believe you. You know that people really, at least our teachers really like it. But to then add on top of it January 2nd and then an early release day on the 16th, which is quite early. Is there a requirement of some kind to get January 2nd, or we're just saying that that's like the holiday, and therefore even though the holiday?
January 2nd is the holiday for our 12-month employees.
Okay. Okay.
It's
Because it
related to the New Year's Day holiday.
All right.
Yes, and that could be moved if you wanted that moved. I think that's what we have this year.
We have an option where that is moved with one of our Veterans Day calendars.
if you want to consider that.
Oh, so we could take that
Yes,
for
you
some.
can.
I mean, part of what I'm looking at is the end, and even though it ends nicely on the 23rd, that's still pretty late, and it does mean that the teachers are back for 2 days afterwards too, quite late in June. So those are the reasons that I was asking those questions, but I'll have some other comments.
And Ms. Evans, I also wanted to point out, we did have one option that split the winter break. And so we didn't start the actual holiday until I think it was
But we started the holiday on the 22nd.
the 22nd,
It's just not popular.
and it was not popular. I mean,
Because then when you move
we
that,
tried it last year too, and no one.
Nobody liked it.
you move
Okay.
that into January, and to offer the 10 days, it then moves the holiday into Wednesday the 4th, with the school
I
week
see,
then being
yeah.
a 2-day school week with people coming back on a Thursday,
Yeah, that's a
Friday
lot,
for
yeah.
school, and that's
And so
difficult.
not to be a Grinch, but is there really any reason we need to have an early release on the 16th? On December 16th?
There's an early release on December 16th. We have those early releases built into the calendar for the end of quarter, and we have that built in as part of the winter and Thanksgiving holiday, and those have always been at board direction.
Well, I understand it if we're getting real, if we're at December 21st or 22nd or 23rd, I kind of understand an early release day. I'm not so sure we absolutely need it on the 16th.
Bill Young, then Janie.
I'm going to stay on December 16th a little bit. If we make that a full day for everybody, is there a place where we can use that to substitute for something else, or that doesn't help us? Is that
That doesn't help us in terms of those 2 hours.
okay? Next
Mr.
question.
Moon, let me clarify on that, because we have to have 180 days, and that technically counts as a day. Okay, you could move the early release somewhere else, but you couldn't trade. You couldn't add another day in somewhere.
Okay. Just trying to go back. Having 90 days for the first semester and 90 days for the second. Is that the legal requirement?
That's within our regulations.
Regulations, policy, or is that
It's within our regulations,
so? Which can be, which board can change,
which the board can change.
and board can do that with a calendar action.
Yes.
Okay. For our 12-month employee, do they get 2 weeks, 10 days during winter break? Is that
No.
okay? So that January 2nd, I'm not advocating for this. I'm just asking. The January 2nd, that holiday for 12-month employee, 12-month contract employees, can that be moved up prior to
Yes.
January 1?
So our 12-month employees, they need to receive within this calendar, because we have federal holidays, they need to receive for this year 10 days off during the school year.
Okay, 10 days off during the school year. Okay, so that can be moved up. And instead of the inauguration day, if he were to give Monday after spring break a day off, will that cause, other than regulations, because they will lengthen our first semester to 91 days and shorten the second semester, other than regulation, is there any other problems you see?
When we think about instructional time for having the quarter end as an early release day on the 27th with another day being off for the 28th, there is a consideration for instructional time for length of the week.
I lost you.
But other than the regulation, the only other consideration would be the length of the week.
Length of which week?
Of the 17th that you're talking about?
January,
For spring,
my eyesight is pretty bad here.
or spring break?
I'm
correct?
talking about inauguration day,
Yes.
making that a school day and substituting that with April 17th, if we did that.
If we moved the inauguration day holiday to the 17th, that would be a full staff holiday for all staff. So it wouldn't allow teachers to have that day back prior to students coming back to prepare for students, which is what we've done these past 2 years.
We had a teacher work day
It was
on
a-
that day,
a-
Mr. Moon.
It's generally been a pink teacher
January being a
work day.
pink
Yes, sir.
teacher work day.
Yes.
And I think just to simplify things, I wouldn't worry too much about 12-month employees.
Okay.
Once you all adopt a calendar, then we determine how many days they have 12-month employees. I think that complicates things a little bit. So I think really just to focus on what our schools and school holidays, I think it simplifies things.
Okay, thank you.
Janie?
I was gonna, I support the early release times before vacations. We have an awful lot of families who travel a very long way. And one of the things years ago when we were able to do year-round schooling, it provided some long vacations in the middle of the school year, because we do have families that travel to their home countries. And families who are driving, and often teachers with young families who are driving, that getting off that early release on that Friday before winter break enables them to get on the road. And I know that it is welcomed by many young families and teachers with young families as well. So that 2 hours makes a big difference in getting out of town if that's what you're doing, and a lot of them are.
Pat?
Just, I hope, a quick question. So in April, that teacher workday on the 28th, if we did move that to the 17th, which I guess is where we've traditionally had it, right? The day after spring break, then that would move the quarter end to the 28th, right? And so the concern there is that if we try to have 90-day quarters, that would bump the last day of school into the last week of June. Is that the worry?
That switch wouldn't, if we move that, that wouldn't have an impact on the end of the year, but our teachers do like having that teacher workday adjacent to the end of the quarter
I see. Okay, thanks.
for grading. Okay. With that, we'll go into the next calendar, which there isn't really much of a change with the pre-Labor Day start calendar. Everything is just moved up 1 week with that particular calendar. And we're posting this calendar here. I'm not going to walk through it month by month, but I will note that the first day for staff is the 19th. It would provide us with one of the shortest summers that we've had in Fairfax County because this year is the latest end of year that we could have because we had the latest start we could have. And then next year would be the earliest start that we would possibly have with a pre-Labor Day start. The first year is hard with any kind of transition. We would make it up then at the end of the year. But again, things have just shifted up a week. You'll see that the end of the school year is June 16th, which this was by far the most popular calendar with all of our associations. And again, because of the constraints around ensuring that we have 90-day semesters, you'll see that April looks very different in this calendar because we have shifted the beginning of the year by a full week. But again, everything is very much the same. You'll see that the quarters over to the far right are 47, 43, 46, 44. Our staff also appreciated the greater balance with the duration of the quarters. We move to the next calendar. Oh, I'm sorry.
I've got a couple of.
Is there a question?
Elizabeth
First of all,
and
can you
then Ryan.
can you just shift up a little bit? There. So the problem that I have with this, and what I've already heard from a number of employees about, is even though it's mid-November, and that's August of next year, that there are a lot of people who have timeshares or family reunions, or they're scheduled, and because they're teachers, and sometimes multiple teachers within a family or multiple FCPS employees, they're very tightly restricted in terms of if they're doing work for us over the summer, if they're doing some textbook stuff, all the different things that they
Curriculum
could be doing.
development.
Right.
Or,
So there's a very limited time, and they said this is not enough time. This is not enough advance warning. So I'd be totally in favor of putting this out as a draft calendar for 2018, for the 2017-18 year, and saying, hey, this is in all likelihood what we're planning on doing as a reasonable alternative. But I just, and I'm like the strongest advocate for pre-Labor Day start and our ability to start when we need to. But the problem is that this premise is a five lost days, and we have freakish winters, and we could literally have the last week of March, be the 5th day, and now you've got April, May, June. You don't even have 3 months left before the end of the year, and you're already sudden switching the calendar. So,
I mean, that's certainly an option. We could just completely take this off the table, and should the day come when, we maybe qualify for the waiver, then we would draft a calendar for the board to look at for
following year.
17, 18. Is that right? 17, 18?
So
Yes,
I think
17,
that
18.
that is a decision point you stated in the beginning, that the board needs to decide that if we get the days and the waiver would be considered, it would be a vote by the board. Do we decide we're going to put this out? Because we would have that discussion with the community at the time you would vote on it. Or does the board want to make a decision now that even if that happens, we wouldn't make that decision? So that's kind of a decision point for the board.
So my advocacy in those two questions, I believe, although I'm not completely clear what you're trying to say, is the latter. Is that if we want to advertise what a calendar would look like and begin the discussion in the community about if we had a pre-Labor Day waiver, this is what the successive year would look like, and begin that in earnest, then okay. And then I'd say on our legislative package on our previous session, move up one of the priorities to let us start school when we want.
Okay. I have Ryan, Sandy, then Ilyang.
So I was going to raise the exact same point as Elizabeth. The one question I want to ask before I personally can make that decision is for us to not do the 2018 calendar yet, but get at least get a figure for the number of days in the summer. And if the following year would amount to more days in the summer with the shortened summer, if you see what I'm saying, then that might be more appetizing to our employees. So if we can just do it in a little advanced planning without scoping out the whole calendar.
I can tell you now that it wouldn't be that different, because next year, even though it's not as late as this year, it's only 2 days. We would only gain 2 days because it's a 6th start versus the 8th start.
Okay. If you could just put that in
But
writing for us.
we
Yep.
can get that together
Thanks.
for you.
And we haven't even begun to look at what 17, 18
No.
could look like, but we could do that. I mean, we could do a model. I think that's kind of what you're referring to, isn't it? I think we can model it, see what it looked like, just as a.
I mean, really, you're just looking at modeling the beginning and we're the beginning or the beginning and the end? The beginning, just to see that time.
And we
Okay,
can do that.
Sandy, Ilyang, then Ben.
Well, I'm going to pick up on that last point first. I think this calendar looks like a good calendar. I like the balance of it. It doesn't start too much before Labor Day. I understand the issue of wanting to give people advance notice. I do think we have been signaling and signaling and signaling, though, that we would like to start before Labor Day. I mean, we've been talking about this, that even this year we were saying if we had one more snow day, we could start before Labor Day. So I hope we've been communicating that fully to the employee organizations and to our individual teachers, so they're aware that we would like to do this if we can. So we've gotten an email, all of us got an email from FEA tonight. Thank you for joining us, Kimberly. Talking about that first day, and this applies both to this calendar and the previous one as well, about having the teacher day start on Friday, and a concern about that. So I'm wondering,
And
the concern that FEA raised in their email to us today was about in August, whether it's the pre-Labor Day or the post-Labor Day, that the teacher day day starts on the Friday as opposed to on the Monday.
it either has to sit there
Or go
or
to
it
the
has to go
end.
at the end.
Well, that's why I was wondering if there was
And that's why where we had it initially, and then we got lots of feedback about, I'd rather have it at the beginning.
Even
So
though it's a
either
Friday?
ways,
It's
yeah, but if it's not there, it has to go at the end.
Well, FEA is suggesting that we put a planning day either on the 2nd or the 4th of January, I believe. So I'm wondering if that's, I don't know why the 4th. The 4th isn't on a Wednesday. I'm sorry. The other calendar?
But then you're going to lose a student day?
any day that you put into any yellow day that you take away, you have to push that yellow day into the next week.
But if instead, rather than the holiday on January 2nd, if that were a teacher planning day, would that be a switch we could do that Friday for that?
We would then have to provide our 12-month staff with a holiday. But if we turn that blue holiday into a pink day, then somewhere we have to find just another blue holiday somewhere. So regardless of what the staff is, we have to find another blue holiday somewhere.
Because keep in mind, you also have to have 194 days for teachers. Okay? So right now, let me explain it. January the 2nd is a holiday for our teachers.
Right.
Okay? So that's not a work day for them. So if you take the strategic planning day and put it right there, if I'm doing the math right, that means we have to give the teachers a holiday somewhere else. Well, you have to have 194 contract days.
So we couldn't switch the SP to the H?
No, you can't.
Essentially, I think what we're trying to say is
doesn't-
all of our colors here on the calendar are static. So you can't interchange one color for another. You can move them around in whatever configuration, but you have to have the same number of blue days, the same number of pink days, and the same number of yellow days.
Susan?
I do want to add, just to clarify, I do believe you can exchange a pink with the blue if we don't worry about the 12th month, because currently the teachers are not working on the 2nd. So there's already 194 days built in.
Right.
So you're taking the workday from the Friday after the NT in August and putting that workday into January 2nd.
Right.
So
that's
you
what I
would
was
still
thinking,
have
yeah,
194
teacher
days.
Yeah.
For teachers,
For
teachers.
teachers,
Right.
then now
we have to find
we have to find another holiday
holiday
for the 12-month
month
employees.
Okay, but the superintendent's telling us not to worry about 12-month
That makes it
employees.
complicated. So thank you for correcting me. But yeah, I think it makes it complicated if we're talking about 12-month employees, because that's a whole nother.
Okay. Well, so
I agree, and we have to also probably remember that January 2nd is going to be a holiday for everybody probably within our community, because it's the day after the 1st.
because first falls on a Sunday, so everyone's going to be taking the second off as the January 1st holiday.
Everyone will have that day off as
So
the
what
holiday.
if I'm trying to respond to what the FEA is telling us, that their members are saying they would prefer. If we switched it for Inauguration Day, the SP for the H in Inauguration Day, would that work would that make it 194 days?
Yeah.
According to Susan, you can flip them.
And I
Okay.
think that's where we're going to have to come into discussions about people be making amendments or doing something, because I know
That's why I'm
there's a
trying
difference of
to-
opinion about
But that's why I'm trying to
supporting
clarify.
Inauguration Day.
I know, so that's why I'm trying to clarify where we are, but I guess the answer is we could switch that Friday SP day for the Inauguration Day if we chose to.
We could do that.
Yes, and I did receive clarification from the team over here who's doing some background. We don't have to take Inauguration Day. It is a federal holiday for DC, Maryland, and Virginia, but we don't have to take it. We have customarily taken it, I understand, primarily for the traffic and just congestion in this area due to individuals going to Inauguration Day. But it's certainly up to the board. It could be a strategic planning day,
When we
just
think
for
about
teachers.
All right, fair enough.
Il-Young, Ben, Janie, and Megan.
Okay, just a couple of questions on the waiver. How many more snow days do we need? I'm not saying that we are I'm praying for snow like Ben is.
We need 5 more days. So if within this school year, if we have 5 inclement weather days, we can then apply for the waiver.
Okay.
And that waiver will stay good, even if from this year, if we had no more snow days, that waiver will stay until 2019, 2020.
Okay, so is there a time period within which we have to apply for a waiver?
There is, the time period is before August 1st. We need to apply for the waiver
August 1st of 2016.
of the year in which we're going to apply for the waiver.
Okay, once a waiver is granted, do we have an option not to take the benefit of the waiver and just wait until?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And just to clarify, once we qualify, there's no actual approval process, just, it's an automatic approval.
You log into the
So we
state
log in.
system.
Right, and
You-
Mr. Moon, you're correct. We could each year look at and determine when you wanted to start. It just gives you the flexibility.
But once we're eligible, we're good now. Again, if we have no more inclement weather days after these 5 days, which I'm sure we will, we're good until 2019, 2020.
Okay, so
And that shows up on the chart that we've posted, where you can see where the years, our high years fall.
I like this calendar much better than the other one. And if you're gonna get snow, let's get snow now.
Get snow in December.
Okay, I have Ben, then Janie, then Megan.
Thank you. I want to second that notion. I think that it's, if we're going to get snow, we need to get it early. And to kind of comment on Ms. Schultz's point, that's a very valid point you bring up. But the likelihood of us having that 5th snow day at the end of March, say, I think is fairly unlikely. I'm not discounting the idea that we're going to have snow days in March, because that's entirely likely. But the likelihood of us having four snow days up until that point, in my prediction, which is again just that, a simple prediction, would be that's not very likely. I will say no one is more opposed here to a shortened summer. But I will say this is my favorite calendar. This is my happy place. I will say it for a few reasons, even though I won't be here to enjoy the benefits of it. First thing is quarter length. In my opinion, the ideal quarter, and we saw that this year, and it did not work. Having a 37-day academic quarter is not good. Not good, capital N, not good. These quarter lengths are much, in my opinion, much more where they need to be. The ideal quarter, I think, is between 42 and 48 days, and you'll note that all of these fall within that. On our post-Labor Day start, they don't, and I think that, when we come back to general comments later, I'll mention that again, that's something that we should try and work on. I'll also say, to the point of delaying this action of applying for the waiver and implementing it in FCPS, I would say that personally, I think that waiting another year is not necessary. I think that the weighed benefits of a slightly shortened summer to the increased stress on students and staff when you have to cope with fixed deadlines and start weeks behind other peer divisions is a trade-off that I think favors heavily the early start. So I would say that trying to implement that at our soonest convenience, whether that would be the 16-17 year or the 17-18 year, the board should strongly consider that as a deciding factor. And I think that in the interest of public engagement and public information, posting both of these calendars as potential options is in a lot of ways very important. I think a lot of our students and staff they were certainly expecting this year to have been an early start. We didn't get that because we were 1 day short. I think that you're going to find that students and staff have a very similar expectation for this year, that we are going to have the requisite number of inclement weather days, and that we are going to qualify for the waivers. So, I won't say that everybody is planning for that, but I'm going to say, I will say that a fair proportion of people in FCPS are planning for that contingency already. So the earlier we can get out front of this and publish this calendar, let people know that this is, hey, this is what this could conceivably look like in all likelihood, is a good move for us.
Thank you. Janie, then Megan.
Okay, I need to understand a little bit better what qualifies us for the waiver. We couldn't apply for a waiver for this.
So should we bring up that attachment if this
Bring up
is
that
coming
attachment.
up?
Oh,
Yeah,
I think
because
that would be easier.
one of it, every year when we get ready to do the calendar, we always get multiple phone calls from people saying, can I rent my usual whatever at the end of August for vacation? And people, put money down. So the problem is always giving people
Scroll
enough lead time if we're going to dramatically change the calendar.
Scroll down to school year totals so that's showing. So if you notice
Okay.
those school year totals, those are the past 10 years. And in the past 10 years, the 5 highest years where we've had inclement weather were 2006-07 with 4 days, 2009-10 with 10, 10-11 with 4 days, 13-14 with 11 days, and 14-15 with 10 days. When you add those days, you'll note it at the bottom, when you add all of those days and divide by 5, our average is 7.8 days. In order to qualify for the waiver, we must have an average of 8 days.
And an average of 8 days over 5 years.
Over 5 years within a 10-year window.
Within a 10-year window.
So if we get 5 days this year, we're able to knock the 2006-07 year off and add 5 to that equation, which gives us 40 divided by 5 is 8 days.
Wow. Predicting weather is very hard here.
Not going to be able
To
to predict
say the
that.
least. I
Okay,
know that's.
Janie, are you good?
I am. Thank you. That was what
Okay,
I needed
Megan?
to say. Thanks.
So I guess I want to make sure I'm not jumping the gun. Looking at these calendars, are we at the option that's got the 2 different veteran holidays?
We haven't
Or
started
we're not
talking
gonna go to
about that
that
yet.
one yet. All right. So then sticking to our post Labor Day, correct calendar? The first, right, it's the only one we've gotten to, right? Because we also,
No, we're on pre-Labor Day right
on
now.
pre-Labor Day. So we've gone through
Well,
post-Labor Day.
all right, so I was listening to the earlier conversation, but maybe everybody just wanted to weigh in. But I thought I started to hear a very convincing chorus that pre-Labor Day for fall of next year really presents a lot of problems for not only our employees, but our families who may well already, anyone who goes to the Outer Banks knows you book your house a year in advance. So, people maybe have already made those plans for this.
So I kind of want to make a recommendation. Elizabeth felt like I didn't say it clearly. So to me, okay. So here's the option. Right now, we can only vote on a post-Labor Day calendar. But if the board wants the option, if we make the waiver cutoff, and the board wants the option to re-vote when that happens on a different calendar that starts pre-Labor Day, what the superintendent is suggesting is we just post this so the public sees pre-Labor Day might be an option. The public would be involved in providing input and feedback. The board wouldn't make a decision without that. But if the public doesn't even see that might be an option, then I don't think the board would do it.
Well, and let me add a little bit to that, because I think it was illustrated earlier, because I think if we don't put something on the table now as a contingency, I think down the road, you would only have the option of considering it, I think, for 17, 18, because families and parents have not had enough advance notice.
So you would have to have a communication plan about this when the board would vote on the calendar for next year, which would have to be the post-Labor Day. You could provide communication to the community that we're 5 days away from this waiver. When that happens, the board will involve the community and make a decision, but here's what it would look like if we did that. Then people would know this could be an option and maybe adjust their plans, and that's going to be the hard decision for the board. I've always been concerned if you pull that trigger too late, people can't plan. And so there's the decision the board needs to make. Do we want the option to make that decision? Not saying what the decision would be, but do we want that option? Then in my mind, we should post this for the public to be aware it might be a decision. Does that make sense?
I think so, but I'll just, I guess, make my position clear. I do not believe that it is in the best interest of this school system to even consider whether we qualify or not, that doing a pre-Labor Day start for 2016, fall of 2016. I think that in the emails I'm getting from the public, in especially Bragg District, but all over the county, people are still confused that the superintendent's budget task force is her task force, and it's just their recommendations. She's made no decisions, and the board's made no decisions. But people already think this school board is proposing cuts to sports.
Okay,
blah,
I'm
blah,
going to
blah.
keep us
So,
focused.
no,
It's
so
getting
Kathy,
late,
my
Megan.
point, Kathy, my point is, I hear what you and Karen and others are saying, but if you post pre-Labor Day, you will have people who have already booked their vacation houses for this coming summer screaming at us, and us being able to say, well, we may not even do it at all. I caution the board,
So
bad
we're,
move. You can only
Okay.
be saying to the public, this would be for 2017-18,
This-
and I wouldn't do it anywhere near the vote for 2016
okay, and
17
that's-
calendar.
That's your feedback. What I'm saying is the board as a whole needs to make a decision on
Well,
their comfort
obviously,
level to
yeah,
do that.
that's why we're
That-
all 12
that's-
weighing in on what
that's
we
my-
think would be the good
that's my
thing to do.
point.
So
Pat,
the other question I have, Dr. Garza, is with the August start for the teachers, even the new ones starting like August 22nd, when would they get their first paycheck? Because normally, I think they get their paychecks starting September, end of September. So will they basically work 6 weeks before they would see a paycheck?
Susan, you want to answer that question? Because I think this calendar before you is very much like what we've had in previous years. So when would our new teachers get their first paycheck?
So if we start post-Labor Day, like we typically have, teachers receive their first paycheck on the last working day of the month of September.
And that's how we've always done it.
With the new teachers coming in almost a week ahead.
Correct.
So, and optically, it looks different, but it's not.
Even with the first calendar, the post-Labor Day, optically it may look different, but it's the same as we've done in the past.
Okay.
Okay, Megan?
And then, yeah, I guess I was trying to figure out why there was, on one of the holidays, why one of them, they were showing January 2nd. It was Well, it'll be on the other veterans calendar, so I'll bring it up then. It's very strange. I think somebody forgot to color in a day.
Pat?
Yeah, thanks. I guess I'll just weigh in on the question of whether or not we should go ahead and publish this potential calendar. I think we should. I have not had any emails yet about the calendar. And it may just be that people in my district are not paying attention yet, because I certainly got a lot last year. Questions in the spring with, oh, if we get another snow day, what's that going to mean? I've already made plans.
We
and it's-
published much later last year.
Right. And so I feel like I'd like to leave the board the flexibility to vote on this calendar when we get closer. And that will give my folks in my district more time. If they see this now, they'll be alerted to the possibility, and then I will hear from them. And it's not binding us to anything, but I feel like we owe the community a look at what it would look like, so that if anybody has, those who still have the flexibility to make plans at the end of the summer can use that flexibility. And I think there probably is still a lot of people who do have that flexibility.
Patty?
I'll just echo what Pat, that I do think it's important to put both calendars out now and give as much notice and just make it very clear what the circumstances are, so that people aren't caught by surprise. And, if you have a choice between booking a vacation or not, that's your decision, but, it's a possibility, I suppose. The other thing I wanted to mention, I'll just throw it out, is the issue of religious holidays. We haven't talked about that, and I don't know if we will, but have received some emails from folks asking about the Jewish holidays in particular. So I wonder and Ms. Evans and I talked a little bit about that, raising the larger question of religious observances and whether or not how we might address that, instead of just making it a blanket holiday for everyone who may or may not practice. Are there other ways that we could recognize and celebrate the religious? Maybe it's a excused absence or something, but just. It is now? It is now? Okay, so maybe just publicizing that. But anyway, I just wanted to raise that. And Ben, I recall that the student leadership group had, with your issue on forum, had raised another holiday too, right?
Okay. I was going to move us on to the other two calendars. Sandy?
Well, since Patty's raised it, I will as well. I do think that this board needs to consider moving in the direction of doing a bit more on the major religious holidays. I had one school where 400 students were absent on Eid, and that's a lot of students to be absent for one day. And I have looked up when these holidays fall. Next year, they are October 3rd and 4th, and October 11th and 5th. The way the holidays are, they start in the evening and go into the next day. So we're talking about 11, 12, October 3rd and 4th, and September 11th and 12th, which in this calendar we could probably accommodate it if we wanted to, but I don't know if the board wants to. I think we need to find a way to deal with this issue, because at least in some parts of our county, we are seeing significant absences, whether it's for Yom Kippur, Rosh Hashanah, or Eid. Now, one of the Eids falls in the summer, so that's not an issue. But I will raise the question whether it would even be a possibility for an individual school to make some sort of a trade. I know we've never done that before, but I'm just, we were brainstorming a little bit about the possibility, if you're a school where a quarter of your students are going to be out on a particular day, is there any way to handle that other than just, I know I'm throwing out a ringer here that's never been raised before, but I'm just trying to think of something other than the entire system dealing with it as a system.
They would have to trade out a holiday, obviously. But I think as much, we talked in our last work session, over 20-something thousand students go to different schools other than their attendance zones.
That's a good point too.
And so if you have one child at one school, I
true.
think it could get pretty complex for parents.
Yeah, that's
and
true.
very difficult to communicate. I get what you're trying to accomplish,
Right.
the flexibility. I just think it's already very difficult to communicate and make, ensure that our parents are well equipped and understand our calendar. If we had varied calendars, I think it would be confusing.
Well, we do have some jurisdictions that have gone and, created holidays around those major religious holidays. New York has, Montgomery County just did, added one. So I think that's something for us to think about for the future, because at this point, the previous notice, doesn't always work perfectly. I still hear from students who say, yes, I was given an excused absence, but then I still had a major project due the next day or 2 days. I was given a day extension. So it's something for us to ponder, and I think we need to move in that direction.
Pat?
Yeah, just very briefly. I wanted to follow up. I think it's probably not for this calendar here for us to consider it because it's just a lot. But I would like to also see us take a look at the policy that we have, whatever it is, because I think basically it says if there's an operational impact, right, then, right, absences and that sort of thing. And I was just talking to someone from Montgomery County School Board last night, and they said that their policy doesn't have to be a system-wide operational impact. If they have schools that are particularly affected by it, they actually made the system-wide change for E based on that. So again, I'm not sure this is the time, but I would join you in bringing that up for conversation later.
Megan?
I just want to caution everyone, because I've been following what's going on with Montgomery County's dialogue as well. School systems around the country, particularly public schools, I thought have been trying to be very clear with the very public they serve. We do not, absolutely do not recognize religious holidays, plain and simple. We do recognize that there are certain times of the year here in the United States over centuries that we will have large populations out. And so we've naturally built in over time a winter break, a spring break, but they are not called Christmas and they are not called Easter. And I very much worry because we are a wonderful, diverse nation, and we were getting diverse by the years. We cannot fall down a slippery slope of starting to say that just because however long ago these somehow developed and mirrored maybe Christian holidays, the bottom line is we're setting these breaks when we have. I look at what Montgomery County did, and I think that their policy of saying if we're going to have 85% of our students out, that that's the notion of then it is not going to be beneficial to be operating school when 85% of your students are gone. And Sandy, I like you're trying to be creative and out of the box and what can we do for a certain school, but in a county of 1 million people and now closing in on almost 200,000 kids, I think we have a really important responsibility to remind everyone in our community these are not religious holidays. They're not called it. They're not recognized for it. And we need to really help people understand that, because otherwise they do feel slighted and offended. But they shouldn't be slighted and offended because we're not basing these on religion.
Okay, we ready to the Veterans Day calendars?
Ms. Smith, if I
Yes,
might
ma'am.
suggest for your consideration, could we maybe determine whether or not we're going to do a pre or post, and that way we could zero in and kind of, I think it could simplify things a little bit maybe,
Okay,
because we have 4 here we're kind
okay.
of shuffling with.
So the question in front of the board, and we're just looking for consensus, how many people want to post the pre-Labor Day calendar for the public's information? 6, 7. Okay, how many do not? Okay, so we will post it kills me, post the pre-Labor Day calendar for the public's information.
Okay, and what we'll do is we'll provide some clarifying language about making sure the public understands.
And we have that language from last year that we can use the same language.
Okay.
Thank you, Dr. Garza. Okay, the last two here?
The last two. So if we move to the post-Labor Day with the holiday, with the H, there it is. You'll note that this is the same as the first calendar that we presented. The only change to this calendar, if you look at January, we have moved the holiday from January 2nd and we have moved that holiday. So we currently use, we recognize the holiday for Veterans Day as an addition to the Thanksgiving Day holiday. So we would create, oh, I guess I'm speaking before, there we go. We would create a Veterans Day holiday on November 11th, and then we would move the January 2nd holiday to November 25th as the second day for the Thanksgiving holiday. So if you can think back and if you point to January 2nd, on the previous calendar, January 2nd was a holiday. It was the New Year's Day holiday. We would create a Veterans Day holiday on November 11th and then simply move that January 2nd holiday to become the 25th, I'm sorry, the 25th for November 24th and 25th, which is the Thanksgiving holiday.
It's just flipping.
It's just flipping.
It's just flipping.
Basically, what we have to remember is that we have 24 blue days on holidays on the calendar. And at the end of the day, we need to ensure that we have 4 green days, 14 pink days, and 24 blue days, along with 180 yellow days.
This is not computing because on the first one in November, the 24th and 25th are blue days already.
The 24th and 25th are blue days, and the 25th is a blue day because in regulation, we recognize that 25th in lieu of the Veterans Day holiday. So in this calendar, we're creating a Veterans Day holiday, and in lieu of the New Year's Day holiday, we would observe that on the 25th.
You're talking about 12-month employees. Don't do that, right?
It's
just a flip.
It's just a flip.
It's just a flip.
It's just a
right?
move from where
January 2nd is the holiday goes to there, essentially. Okay, now talk about the second Veterans Day option.
If you look at the second Veterans Day option, we would simply be moving the October 7th school planning day to November 11th, creating a holiday for students, but not a holiday for staff. There is an adjustment then at your duration of your quarters because we're moving the school planning day from one quarter into the next. So we just made a simple adjustment of the number of days.
Okay, I have Megan, Elizabeth, and Ben.
One
Dr.
final thing I
Garza?
think is important. The staff has also provided a listing for you because this is something that I appreciate you all providing, Marty. It's because we haven't had it at our fingertips in the past, is what surrounding school systems are doing on different holidays. So that was also posted for your just information as you had to have this discussion.
Okay, Megan?
So what I did notice about the surrounding jurisdictions is that the smaller jurisdiction of Alexandria and City of Falls Church are open. But the major school systems, Prince William, Prince George's, are closed, and District Columbia closed. Loudon and I always tease them. They do everything we do, so I'm sure if we end up honoring Veterans Day, I bet you they switch. I'm not sure what that means, Montgomery County early closing.
So Montgomery, it's simply that it's an early closing.
They do an early release. Do we know it's a 2-hour early release?
We're not aware of how long that is. It just states on their calendar that it's an early release.
Okay. So I do believe that we need to be recognizing Veterans Day. Elizabeth Schultz will speak to this as well. I happen to be one of the few board members that still have children in schools, and we are hearing from our families that there are some schools that do a wonderful job on Veterans Day doing veterans things in the schools, but a vast majority don't. And the most cogent thing I can help this board understand is if we felt that we do a better job honoring Veterans Day by having kids in schools and teaching them about the sacrifice of our veterans, then we shouldn't recognize any of the other holidays throughout the year, whether it's Columbus, whether it's Martin Luther King, because we should bring them into the schools and on those days teach them about those heroic figures. So
I'm going to go back to my guidance at the beginning of the work session. I don't think we need to spend the time right now trying to convince each other of our viewpoints on this. I think we need to use this time to answer questions, and then, if there's an amendment to change the calendar, then we can have the discussion then, but not to get too far into our reasons for it.
Well, I understand that's the guidance you gave. I thought the whole point of work sessions versus business meetings is that we're supposed to have the dialogue with one another. But I'll try to stick to then my primary concerns here. I would like to first understand, because I keep hearing that it's just a flip, but trying to understand why, when you look at November, one option when you look at the calendar post Labor Day, not with Veterans Day, we just had the normal election, the 2 days are off, the 7th and the 8th. And so then you go to the Veterans calendar, and what I'm wondering is, you don't have to have 3 teacher workday / planning days in the week of November 7th. You actually could even be looking at the duration of quarter 1 versus quarter 2, because the first quarter is 42 days, the second quarter is 48 days. So even if you shifted the first quarter by a couple of days to be longer, then they might balance one another, and then you're not necessarily trying to work with the teacher work days in support of the...
Ms. McLaughlin, you can move it, that could be moved anyway. We were just modeling what it could be or some examples.
Right,
but the only thing that has to happen that week is the Tuesday.
Right, and so...
November the 8th.
Right, so what I wanted my colleagues to think about is, there's no reason we could still keep October 7th as a planning day. So move it off where it's designated on the 7th. So kids go to school on the 7th. You don't end the quarter on the 4th. The kids are, Friday they go home, Monday they come back to school on the 7th, they have a day off, and then they end up, you can have the quarter end on Thursday the 10th. And then you've got your holiday there, and then if you need to have one more teacher planning day, then it could be on that Monday the 17th. What then you've done is the kids are still getting instruction 3 days the week of November 7th and 4 days the week of November 14th. And, the kids will tell you that this is kind of what happens. November and January have a lot of breaks. They just do. But since it's toward the end of the quarter and starting another quarter, I'm far less concerned about kids having a 3-day week than a 4-day week and a 3-day week, because they've all started in the new quarter anyway. So I will say, in terms of, Ms. Schultz borrowed one of mine, so that's why I keep looking going, what am I trying to point to? The other point, Mr. Smith, I want you to help explain to me, because you've got the calendar in front of you. January 2nd, how can that be a school day and a regular operating day? Because I thought it is federal practices that if a holiday is on a Sunday, then you get the next day off. Like if 4th of July is on a Sunday, you get the Monday off. So how would we be telling our families and our kids, you're all going to school?
He said that earlier.
Keep in mind the calendar we posted for our recommended calendar does have that as a holiday. It's just an option.
But it's not an option. That's what I want to make sure that we're not getting ourselves confused. So, Kathy, I would like Mr. Smith to explain to me, am I right or wrong that you can't make January 2nd a school work instruction day because of practices that if the holiday, the first falls on a Sunday, you have to recognize the second as a holiday.
But if you look at general practices in the area, most individuals, most businesses and schools will have that day off as a holiday. We could choose to recognize that holiday somewhere else in the calendar, just as we do now with Veterans Day.
Well, I will tell you, either this is a way to make sure that it is so unbelievably unattractive to honor Veterans Day, but to even suggest that this board and this community would want to see January 2nd become a, hey, I know you had your New Year's Day
Okay,
on Sunday.
Megan, it's enough.
No, I'm just.
No, it's enough.
I'm trying to
Staff
understand.
gave two choices.
Well,
one of the choices has school on the 2nd, one does not. They're trying to provide different choices to the board.
Well, and it's up, I mean, you can move around anything you want. So, I mean, we're not suggesting that that's a good idea. We're just trying to show some different options. I mean, your point's a good one. It's not a good day to take, and we're not trying to make it look bad or look good. We just gave you a couple of options. It could be reflected in different ways. In fact, one of them that I don't think you had a chance to visit about too much was we did move the October Strategic Planning Day to that Friday on Veterans Day in October to November the 11th as another one just to think about.
Right,
Would make it a day for our students.
and my argument for why you would want to do that is because you're then having teachers working for 3 days and kids are off for 2. So I guess here's my concern, Ms. Smith. Once again, 4 years joining on the board, if what you're telling me is, and this is why I don't like the process we have, staff can come up with something, and in this case, both of them are not good. You can probably find a hybrid that might work between these. But as a result, the challenge for the board then is going to have to be getting 7 people to fix what are 2 really bad choices.
And this is personal decision. That's your thought about it. They're 2 really bad choices. I don't know where the board is on this. Staff presented their recommendation with work.
These are not.
No, not these.
Yeah.
No, I'm talking about before the Veterans Day. Staff had their recommendation of their calendar. Knowing that there's an interest in looking at Veterans Day, staff gave 2 examples. Where it's left with the board, the agenda item is staff's recommendation. So board members then can make amendments to staff's recommendation. And then the board would vote on those amendments.
Well, I will just be on the record in saying, after 4 years of being on the board, I wish, since Ms. Schultz and I have been especially public about Veterans Day, it would have been really nice if we had been able to meet with either Mr. Smith or Dr. Garza to review these, because we could have actually been able to say, here's how we avoid presenting things that now just look so unattractive. We're going to have a harder time with our colleagues picturing how to make this work.
And I don't think that works for the transparency for the rest of the board.
We could have just not had any Veteran Day options. We were just trying to help facilitate what it could look like. And forgive me if the examples are not good ones in some board members' minds. We were just trying to help.
And these are simply posted for the work session. When we post as new business, we will only be posting the one recommended calendar. And as I've worked with board members in the past, if there are any amendments, we would then post those additional amendments for public consideration before the vote.
Elizabeth?
So in a slightly different way, this does make it more difficult if there's any advocacy for a change, because now this is sort of a little bit ingrained in that, anything other than what's recommended is really unattractive. So I'm hoping that there is some willingness on this board to look at some alternatives. I think that the first quarter that we had this year was, as predicted when I offered amendment last year, not good. And I still think that the option of moving the quarter end which is my amendment last year, is still a plausible and actually attractive outcome of putting it on, and I know I'm thinking outside of the box, but on Monday, the 14th. And the reason I say this is that with growing concerns of students and stress, especially in that first quarter, and some of the incidents that we're seeing at quarter end and kids pulling all-nighters and prescription pill abuses and all kinds of things, that wouldn't it be innovative to put a quarter end on a Monday and have a 2-3 day weekends, or a 3-day weekend and then another weekend before the quarter end, to allow kids to have time to balance projects, papers, collaboration, which I'm seeing more and more of, as opposed to lone studying. So I will continue to work behind the scenes now that we see this. I do predict, obviously, an amendment if we're only going to put forward a standard calendar. I will say one thing that's a little tiny bit concerning is the notion that really, for all intents and purposes, the holiday that we're giving to employees, 12-month employees, on Friday the 25th, really is the Veterans Day holiday. I mean, that's really, we've just conveniently moved it, and I think that begs, contemplation by all, that we've moved something for our convenience that probably shouldn't have been moved. I do not support not having the second off, or at a minimum, maybe a teacher workday, so there is some potential to move there. But if we did have the 14th as the quarter end, you'd be adding 4 days onto the first quarter, and you'd get to 46 days. That's a reasonable quarter. So, you could have a nicely, very, very well-balanced quarter at 46 and 44. So that's probably what I'm looking at. I don't, until I start playing with the Scrabble tiles and moving them around, I almost want a touch screen and pick that up and move it there and then see what happens. Have a tumble effect. Maybe that's the next, online budget tool, online calendar tool.
Well,
if you move one, what happens?
And one consideration for moving the end of the quarter to the 14th is that we normally like to have a teacher workday adjacent so that teachers can work on their grades at the end of the quarter.
Yeah, but they've got those other 2 days, the 7th and the 8th. So, there's a lot of build-up time to that, and you can still do. You still have plenty of opportunity to do teacher consultations. I have more and more teachers taking advantage of the fact of doing teleconferences and arranging, alternate methods, even Skyping conferences, and that's actually, they're finding that parents are more receptive and they're getting, rather than to shove everybody into, a 10-minute.
It wouldn't necessarily be for conferences as much as it would be for our middle and high school teachers, giving those end of quarter exams, and being able, if we're doing that on the 14th, then they wouldn't be able to use the teacher workday prior to do grades. They would have to do those. They would actually have to do grades after those end of quarter exams. So we would have to be able to find some way to provide them time to do those grades at the end of the quarter.
All right, that's okay. Well, we'll keep looking at it, but the we're stuck because we've always done it that way model. I think we have to be a little bit more creative thought leaders, especially when you look at the calendars of the surrounding jurisdictions, and clearly 50% or more have figured out a way to get Veterans Day off. So, and I'm going to echo what Ms. McLaughlin said. Some of our schools, like Sangster, like Orange Hunt, like Hunt Valley, some of them do an amazing job, amazing. Others do nothing. So The notion that we're with magnanimity offering the opportunity for children to learn about Veterans Day and that there is an equivalent learning opportunity is a false narrative.
Mr. McElvain.
Just real quick, this is for Dr. Garza. We require schools to submit a list of the things they're doing to honor Veterans Day, correct?
Yes, we always have, yes.
Okay. Is that accessible to the board?
Sure, we can provide that.
Okay, thank you.
Pat?
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to say that I do appreciate Dr. Garza trying to show us a couple different ways to manage Veterans Day. I think that she knew we were probably going to have this conversation because every year, we have a couple board members who bring it up, and I appreciate that they bring it up. I think it's worth talking about, and this feels a little bit like no good deed going unpunished. I have to say, it troubles me a little bit, the suggestion that I think has been made that Dr. Garza specifically or deliberately created options to make it look unpalatable. I think that imputes a motive to Dr. Garza that I don't think is fair, and I think somebody needs to just say that. As far as Veterans Day itself, I've always been a little bit agnostic about it, I guess, because I think either way we do it is a good way to honor veterans. I think as long as we are doing good things in the schools, it gives an opportunity for parents who are, current military or veterans themselves to come in on their day off and participate. And that's different from Columbus Day. I mean, Columbus has been dead a while, right? It's not the same kind of a holiday. So if you want to celebrate Veterans Day, you have veterans come in. You have, current serving military parents come in, and I've seen really great things go. At the same time, I could see giving people the day off as a way of honoring. So the way I look at it every year is what effect does it have on the calendar? So if somebody wants to recommend a calendar that has Veterans Day off, and and when I look at it, I see, okay, that can work with the calendar and not cause a lot of other agita. I would go for it, but I would just say, talk to me. We're going to have amendments due, I guess, Ms. Smith, on the 23rd or something like that.
Yes, Monday the 23rd, so we can get them posted for the public.
Right. Between now and then, please talk to me about it. I don't want to get to the point where I have to vote on this and I haven't had a conversation with whoever is proposing an amendment.
Okay, we are adjourned. Thank you. Oh, I didn't see any hands go up. Okay, Patty and then Megan.
One thing that hasn't been raised is what does the county do? And I know in other discussions we seem to bring that up. And so I wonder if anybody had done any research as to whether or not the county Board of Supervisors and the county side of the government, do they celebrate Veterans Day? Do we know that? They do? So that's just a data point, I think, that's helpful. And then regarding, and it seems like it's the same discussion every year, so I'm not sure we need to, unless there's new information, but Mr. Moon, Mr. McElvain, and I were at Flint Hill Elementary, and that's one of the ones that's always very, very good. And the remark was even made by the principal, Mr. Rivera, that isn't it nice that some of your parents are off from work today and can be here to be recognized and to celebrate. And I'll say it every year, those are our true heroes, and to see one in the flesh means a lot. And I was asking some of the parents, well, how would it be if you had the day off? And they said, well, some of us might take our kids downtown to a monument or something. And so I don't know. I think for me, the jury is still out, and I'm hoping to hear some more information that would be truly compelling rather than just us regurgitating the discussions we've had in the past.
Megan?
Two things. I appreciate Ryan pointing out that schools have somehow submitted to Dr. Garza's staff that they have plans for Veterans Day, because we do have 200 schools in this district. And I find it curious that somehow the McLaughlin boys are somehow in a district where, at the part of the district where it's not happening, and Ms. Schultz, where her children go to school, it's not happening. So I think it's wonderful that we have schools who do it well. It's still not a reason to necessarily say we don't honor Veterans Day. I'm very glad that Ms. Hines said something in her remarks, because in the 4 years I've been on the board, I've tried to be very careful and very respectful in the things I say. And if my remarks were implying that I was impugning Dr. Garza's effort for trying to sabotage Veterans Day, that's not what I was trying to communicate. I was struggling at looking at these options that really both were very unattractive. In the 15 minutes I studied them both, I started looking at other ways, as Elizabeth more eloquently put, moving the Scrabble tiles around. And so it did concern me on why the options that we looked at really were, in my mind, even the one on January 2nd, how that even got there. So, Ms. Hines, thank you for pointing that out. Dr. Garza, I would never want to impugn your reputation as trying to do anything intentional to undermine the work of this board or any of us as individuals. And same goes to Mr. Smith. It's just expressing my frustration, but I didn't mean to imply something otherwise.
Let's go next step.
Wait a second, because I have Ben first.
Thank you. With Ms. Smith's indulgence, I'd like to comment on the issue at hand, but do a brief overview of some of the other things I heard during the conversation. Is that okay? Or would you rather I just comment? Okay. On the Veterans Day issue, my personal preference is that we recognize that as a holiday, a full holiday for staff and students. I think it sends, I think it's a very worthwhile observation to note that Ms. McLaughlin and Ms. Schultz shared. I also happen to be one of those students. I'm not saying that that's a uniform thing across FCPS. In fact, one of my greatest joys yesterday was seeing all the wonderful things that our students had done across the division, and there were countless examples of that. The challenge is that's not a uniform reality in our schools. And I think that, we are providing the students and staff the opportunity to recognize it, sure. I think that the only way that we can ensure equity in doing that is by giving students and staff the day off. And I think, for what it's worth, I'll say that I don't necessarily support it's preferable to keeping it the way it is. I don't fully support the idea of having it just be a teacher work day, staff planning day. I think that sends the wrong message to our staff who are veterans and who did serve or might have had spouses or family members who were in the service. I don't think that sends necessarily the right message. So for whatever that's worth, I like to share that. But I'm very interested to hear that we are keeping track of what schools are doing. I think, if we don't move forward with the idea of taking Veterans Day as a holiday or as a staff work day, finding ways to ensure that schools are putting on quality programming for that, I think is very important for the leadership of the school system moving forward.
So I have there's two next steps that I know that we talked about. One is that we're going to post the pre-Labor Day start, and the other that the amendments are due November 23.
Be sure to show on that one that it's for the 2017-2018 school year.
No, 2016-17.
As option model for 2018.
No.
That's not correct.
We're going to post the standard school year, the pre-Labor Day one, but they also wanted to see what day school would start in 2017-18.
Develop a pre-Labor Day option for 2017-2018.
Separate bullet, right?
It's two different things. It's what Mr. McElveen had asked for.
But we also want to post the 16th.
That's correct. That's correct. And really, it's not an option. It's just I think you wanted us to model it.
Yeah. The other's the regular agenda item. This one's going to be posted. And then if you could also add one about amendments are due Monday, November 23. Elizabeth, did you have something else?
Actually, it was the fourth It's the fourth bullet. I think that that ought to be a standard practice, actually, is if there is a comprehensive list of all of these Veteran Day activities, I'd be fascinated to see it. So,
Patty?
Just, that just makes me think about the discussion we had a few years ago about celebrating people going into the service at graduations. And the board decided that rather than stipulate how they had to do it, we just said, it's our policy, we want you to do it in some way. And then we asked for just a report of how people are recognizing. And some were separate ceremonies, some were a ribbon or a cord, you know, various things that they would do. And so maybe this is another one. I'm just throwing out an option for the board that it may be that we say as a board and to the staff, we want this to be recognized in some way, and then report to us. We want to see it. Right now, there's no requirement for anything, so that's what I'm saying.
It's a requirement to do something. It's up to the schools on how they do it. The requirement is that they recognize Veterans Day.
Yeah, that sounds like that's not really happening.
I'm so frustrated by hearing that because there are a bunch of schools, and to make that statement that we say it sounds like it doesn't happen, I don't have any proof to know that.
And so
I might
that's
know about an individual school or 5 schools or 7 schools.
we've given you
but
3
we have a lot of
examples
schools.
today. 1, 2, and 3.
But there's a ton of schools.
But
So
that
when we
number-
generalize, okay,
That'll get to that fourth bullet, getting the information. I think that's the point.
Okay, Sandy?
Maybe it's understood, but on the first bullet, I think it's.
We'll have to reword that. I know exactly what you're talking about.
We also need to communicate it. It's not just posting it. We
I
also
know.
need to communicate to our, to the public that.
We've put it on our website in the past. We put it out through social media that this is what an early pre-Labor Day start would look like.
And it's really a potential. It's a potential.
It's a
proposed.
proposed.
Right. And so put out in our press releases and things that there's also the second.
That's correct.
That there's a second alternative option that we could consider, so.
And
We'll
again,
put some language
we
with
have
it.
the same
So-
language. We just put it out later last year.
So my suggestion would be that the agenda item gets updated to specify in the key points on the agenda item so people understand why the other one's posted.
Yes, we will do that.
Okay, thank you. All right, I'm closing my eyes and saying we're adjourned.